I am very honored to have be in the presence of three very experienced, knowledgeable, and influential people in our industry. So we get to hear from them today. So I will introduce them, and I am going to read just because I don't want to miss anything. So first we have Mike Ditter, who's the Senior Vice President and Team Leader at Conference Direct. He has been doing business for over 30 years in the hospitality industry. Prior to joining Conference Direct in 2001, he served in lots of different capacities in sales with Starwood and Hilton. Currently, he is in the Conference Direct Hall of Fame and leads a team of 14 Conference Direct associates. He has two sons, Chad, 27, Mac, and 25, who he is immensely proud of. And guess what? One of them is getting married in August. Mike is passionate about skiing, golfing, boating, and coaching. He's a Coug through and through. I'm sure we have some Cougs in the audience, with a double major in restaurant, hotel management, and business administration. Let's welcome Mike. Next, we have Tahira and Dean. No small job, head of program for IMEX. Tahira is a curious, lifelong learner who started with a diploma in event management 3 decades ago, and last year completed her master's in creativity and change leadership. She's an author of Intentional Event Design, Our Professional Opportunity. She's head of program for IMEX, a mother of 2, and lover of anything with bubbles. I know I love that too. And this is super cool about Tahira, I think. She says, #strong but fluffy. Guess how many pounds she can press with her legs? Anybody want to venture to guess? 400 pounds. It's true. So let's give it up for Tahira.
That's amazing.
And last but not least, we have Colby Shoup. He's the Senior Global Sales Director for Hyatt Salesforce Americas. He started his hotel industry career in 2005, and he graduated with a chef's degree from the Culinary Institute of America. He's worked at 8 different Hyatt properties and opened multiple Hyatt hotels in both operations and sales, from Columbus, Ohio, San Antonio, Denver, and Seattle. He grew from hotel operations to sales in his current role as Senior Global Sales Director on Hyatt Hotels Meeting and Events team. He works with end users and third parties and lives in Seattle, from San Francisco north to Seattle. He lives in Seattle with his partner Mike and their 4-legged child Brixton. I'm sure he has a picture of Brixton somewhere, who is from Thailand. Colby loves to cook, enjoy outdoor activities like hiking and watching and playing sports. He's super active and plays multiple sports on the weekends. I have fun facts, so let's welcome Colby. I forgot your fun fact, so I gave you Tahira's fun fact, but Colby's fun fact is his life goal is to visit all 7 continents, and he's already got 3 of them done. So there you go. Mike's fun fact is that he had a hole-in-one on a par 4 to win his golf course championship. Hole-in-one on a par 4, that is a long way. So that's a little bit about our panel. Would you guys like to get into the questions, shall we? Okay, so each of you are going to ask or answer this first question, which is, what trends are you seeing in the way that venues or hotels are being sourced for meetings and events? So let's start with that. And Colby, can you start us off?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me today. Appreciate everyone being here. As the hotel industry obviously is, up and down and crazy left and right, and especially nowadays, there's a lot going on. But some trends and sourcing that's happening right now, broke it down a little bit. I think a lot of what you're going to hear today is in the year, for the year, short term, and smaller meetings that are being sourced, whether it's corporate, financial, government, tech, pharma, association, sports, continuously. A little bit of trends that are happening in our corporate sector. It's definitely an increase of smaller meetings, your 10 to 50 on peak in the year, for the year. You're not seeing the 500 plus rooms on peak pattern a lot, especially in the corporate market. They're also tending to be towards the middle of the week pattern, especially for your CEOs and VPs that do not want to travel or have their work colleagues travel. We're seeing a short-term meeting aspect to that, 8 to 5 for 2 days, and then you're in and out. The SKOs that were in the first quarter of this year, a little bit different trend. Typically in the years past, we've seen the SKO is 500 plus on peak. Now it's regionally and also based on location as well, where you have multiple SKOs throughout the region, whether it's West Coast, Midwest, East Coast, or Northwest or Southwest, whatever you may have there. We're seeing a lot more of that happening as well, especially with the corporate companies, rather than a big force. Customers are also using more in-house hotels or smaller venues, unique and boutique, something outside the box as well that we're seeing a trend.
That's great, Colby. So kind of what you're saying is that you're seeing a lot of, instead of big, huge meetings, a lot of smaller regional meetings. Some of those SKOs got, instead of having one big SKO, they're being divided up into several different events.
Is anybody else thinking, what's an SKO? Because it took me like a minute to remember.
I do sales kickoff meeting.
Sales
Sorry,
kickoff
apologize.
So sales kickoff meetings. So those are a little bit about kind of what's happening with the types of meetings and how you're seeing that change. And with those types of meetings, you're also seeing a lot of short-term kind of lead time in booking those meetings. So what does that mean for you as a venue who's being sourced?
As far as a venue, whether it's a cross brand, whether it's Hyatt, Marriott, any of the Hilton supplier chains, it's all about communication. It's all about responding in a timely manner, getting the information and facts to the meeting planners such as yourselves. In a timely manner, so that way either you can make the decision or your end users can make the decision or your clients make the decision. Because a lot of times, right now we're seeing the budget being shortened. An approval process. So once you have information, you have the green light to book and contract. Sourcing wise, and a lot of times it's all about budget, bottom line. Where okay, here's my a mixture of getting your best value for what you're getting. Then they're going to make the decision right then and there. And if you don't respond in a timely manner or communicate, you're not going to get what your answer is or get the location that you're looking for.
Okay, so with that short-term kind of leadway and the smaller meetings, things are happening faster in general. Decisions are being made more quickly. Okay, thank you, Colby. Tahira, do you have anything to add regarding trends that you're seeing?
Well, I know that there's like about 7 more trends you have on there, so which I think is actually really interesting. It is coming down to people are not responding because they don't have the time to. So that's not a trend, that's a shift. So it's really about being a lot smarter about how we're going to be doing the sourcing, being a lot more thoughtful and strategic and targeted on where you're doing your sourcing so that you are going to get the responses from the ones you really want the response from versus going out to a lot. And it's about relationships. So it's, Colby's like, yep, if I know somebody and I know they're serious, I'm going to respond to them versus others that are in the pipeline. Are you finding that too, Mike?
I do. Yeah. So it's my turn.
No, just to piggyback, I think also I call it old school, but if you really have a question, you really want to find something, pick up the phone. A lot of times nowadays, that obviously we have email and information that we have to have for backup, but partnering, having that relationship, communication, telephone, hey, Susie, I need to get this right like in 10 minutes. I'm presenting to the client in a half hour. It's all back to the basics too. I think we have to get back to as well as in general.
So what I'm hearing you say is that the trend is shorter term meetings, shorter lead times, different types of meetings. And in response to that trend, some of the things that you're saying are relationships, going back to the basics. So is that a trend or is that a challenge, would you say?
I would say both, in my opinion. I don't know if you guys have something different about that, but.
Okay. Mike, what kinds of trends are you seeing from a sourcing perspective from your point of view?
For sourcing, we I'm unique in our way. In our company, we utilize Cvent as the channel to communicate with the hotel community. So we have some great proprietary information tools help us get information to share to our customers. But post-COVID, right now, you see so much compression in 24 and 25 and the lack of availability. It's a super challenge. We have to spend a lot of time telling our customers to be more flexible with their patterns, and just flexibility overall has been really key. I think in the hotel world, I really am empathetic because there's so much activity of leads and that they're just a time constraint. I think back in the day, for myself, I kept left all my cards on the table in an RFP. I think it's really super important to demonstrate the value of your event to the hotels, what you will generate. Because all the hotels are sitting there qualifying these opportunities in their hotel. And I think it's a smart thing to get your business on the lead of the pile and to get availability over another particular event. I think that's super duper important. You got the dormers involved qualifying business. I like to have the relationships, and they're kind of gone because during the carnage, all the salespeople I know are not there, and so it's really challenging. Yeah.
When you talk about trends, one of the trends we've seen coming out recently is that 60% of the industry is new post-COVID. So it is harder to have those relationships.
And so, Tahira, is the 60% on both the supplier as well as the planner side, would you say?
That's what the trends are showing us.
Okay.
That, I think there's still, when we go to events like this, we see the core, the people who've been in it for a while, so it doesn't feel like that. But you walk into a property and try to have your conference operated, it sure feels like it, doesn't it? So, and this is the reality, but how do we then start to train and upskill that next level, that next generation of the industry to be able to meet the needs of our demanding clients?
Yeah, we were at a customer event of ours, and Frank Poncinati of Hilton was saying that 80% of their employees have 2 years and less experience in the industry.
Yikes.
Think about that. 2 years. Pretty amazing.
That's definitely across brands, whether it's at Marriott, Hilton, it's across the hotel industry in itself. And it's, honestly, it's not just sales division. It is operations. It's everything where we're starting out from, we used to know people there for 15, 20 years. Now they've been there for an average of 6 months to 2 years. So it's definitely a challenge in aspect, but also the trend, too, that we're seeing.
So I think, and definitely something that I've heard as well, but Tahira mentioned something about trends in terms of sourcing and making sure that instead of sourcing a bunch of different venues and hotels, maybe narrow it down. And so I know on the supplier side, that would help, right? Because you don't have to go through as many, or what Mike said is providing more information about the value of the business. So is that happening, or is that, I wish it would happen?
I wish it would. We have to cast a bigger net now in order to get availability with a lot of our events. So we have to, do 25 hotels. It's just, initially you want to go, typically we like to do 5 to 7, which is reasonable. But then when you get no availability, you keep going and you keep going. And it is challenging. And a lot of times, you got to know, the salespeople have to know, well, this is the availability I do have, please share it with us. And then we talk to our customers and say, hey, this is the availability they're going to have. If you want to be at this particular hotel, do you have that flexibility? Then they got to go to their bosses and say, hey, would you think about this or not do this? And the corporate world is very challenging because they're very stringent on what they want, what dates, and what pattern, because the bosses don't want to hear that there's a challenge someplace for their event.
And the other trend that we're seeing is that it's all Tuesday to Thursday patterns, so it's exactly so many walls, right?
Hotel's favorite pattern in the world. But again, it's a new trend in a way, so there's going to have to be there's a way to do it, because if it's not just the corporate world, it's also the other industry markets that are doing the same thing that the corporate world is doing. So it's definitely something to work through, and it all depends on location, depends on the hotel, it depends on the venue, what it could work out, because there's also back to your comment, Mike, is flexibility and education too. For example, a challenge is one of my clients last week did not have a particular location or anything, and it's in the year for the year, so there's a challenge of space opportunity that we've been seeing. But I had to source 25 different hotels across the country, and they had to have a decision within 48 hours as well. So again, it's about education piece, trying to help them, get to guide them, whether it's on what their options are and obstacles, whether it's a budget, rate, space, pattern. It's a lot of, again, back to the communication to make sure they're getting the right information to help their clients or end users.
Okay. It used to all be rate, state, space, and now it's rate, state, space, and what you said is value. So, what are you bringing to the hotel? Because there's a whole RevPAR that everyone's still catching up. So,
Yeah, as Mike said it, the carnage. Haven't recovered from the carnage quite yet. So Mike, you mentioned using Cvent as kind of the sourcing platform that Conference Direct uses. So what other technology or tools are in use today, and where do you see that trend going? How is technology and AI and all these things we're hearing playing a role in sourcing?
can we poll the audience and see if anybody is not using technology to source venues? Anybody not using Cvent?
Yeah.
That was my next question. 80% of our leads through Hyatt hotels is through Cvent.
So I guess another kind of follow-up question is, so you use technology, right, to source venues, and yet we want relationships, right? So you get 25 leads coming through your Cvent inbox, and you're one manager looking at all those leads. How do you, please give me your insights on how to manage that.
I think it's really important from the sale, because of my hotel world, is really the salespeople to understand what's good business for their hotel. I'd rather them, since I'm waiting for an answer, I'd rather them say it's no space. It's not good business for us. I need to know that, right? I can move on to the next opportunity or another hotel that makes it work for a particular event. So I think it's understanding really what's good business for the hotel.
And you're also saying a no can be as valuable as a yes.
Yes.
I agree, because it's also about educating and understanding why. When you, especially when you're working with an end user customer or client, and they're like, why haven't any of these hotels responded to me? Why haven't they said yes? Why haven't they given me a rate yet or anything? Well, it's because then you can obviously go down through the variables of the reasons why, and it helps them understand, okay, this is what's happening, and then maybe become flexible, more educated, more moving their pattern or rate or whatever location, whatever it is, based upon information. I would say too, we brought up AI. Mm-hmm. AI is out there. We're all doing it, whether it's small increments, big, whether, we have through our hotel systems, whether it's a .com lead or anything, you're getting a response in 5-10 minutes. That's all a part AIG, where you're happening, information's getting there, but then there's also the follow-up. So I think that's going to continue to grow and develop throughout the hotel and supply industry. It's a matter of what direction it goes, because there's still going to be a human element to that, where you have the information, okay, well, something's changed, what's going on? The variable comes now, I need to shift my power, I need to lower my rooms, I need to change the F&B minimum, I need to change this breakout. You're going to have that constant back and forth. So that part of the human aspect is going to come into play more too.
Okay, that's great insight, Colby, on AI, and it's already in use today. And everybody's already using technology as a way to source meetings and as a way to respond to RFPs. I guess kind of what I'm looking for is, what direction do you see that going forward? Because we're saying getting back to basics, relationships. So how do we advance technology to help improve relationships and, kind of getting better and getting back to basics? Any thoughts on that? Any of you?
I personally think we need to find it somehow more personable or more educated to the actual program in there. Whether it's the number of breakouts, whether it's the season you're looking for, if that pattern does not work for that particular sourcing venue, well, here's an alternate. Or how can I, make that more meeting detailed wise, whether, okay, I see this breakout have 10 people, but you want a classroom instead of a different meeting set. Really diving into those small increments of what's happening to benefit the client, get that information out. So I would like to see that happen somehow, some way, but I don't know how fast that's going to happen.
I know this is really crazy, but I think it would be really helpful if actual sales kits actually listed the number you can actually fit in a room versus what is in the sales kit, because it's always 10% more than what actually fits. You throw in some tables, you throw in some speakers, boom, all of a sudden your specs don't match. And that's not even being mean, that's just a reality. So
No, you're right, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed as well as a trend or challenge that we've been talking about this morning, is making sure that the absolute best is front and forward. that way you're making the best educated decision for yourselves or your clients is important. So I think that's an area that needs to be addressed across supply chain for hotels.
I think it's also, it is about, there's always new hotels, there's always new exciting things coming out, then there's the new ways that participants are wanting to interact, and they don't want to be in ballrooms, they want to be in those great, the staircases that are out there, that's where they want their meetings to be. They want to be outside, they want fresh air, so it is about looking at the whole property that you have and looking at what are all those sellable items. We did 2020. Everybody remember 2020? Oh, 2020. So we did an event in January of 2020, and we ended up putting an industry stage breakout, but right in the foyer outside the ballroom, and 150 seats, people with headsets. Every hotel salesperson that walked by was like, I have a new breakout to sell. And that's the reality, is we are looking for different ways of using space. So when you're sourcing in a box. When you're operating outside of a box. So it's also, how can we use tools like AI? Like, wouldn't it be great if you looked at a ballroom for a hotel, instead of seeing that it holds 500 people, it actually pulls up a whole floor plan just like this and shows you that it actually holds 460. That would be helpful when I'm trying to source. And those are the things that are pretty easy now, especially, Cvent has social tables, and it has, everything is there. So marrying those together a little bit more in a technology way would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I think you said earlier, be honest with what your capacities are, and then being creative and making sure that all your space possibilities are available to, and that not only the sellers understand them, but the customers can have access to those. And I think to this point too, Colby, if Cvent and these other platforms, it still takes time as a venue to enter all of that information and have it right and keep it updated. But maybe it's worth it, or maybe AI will continue to help in that process to where it's able to marry that information much more easily.
I think that's where we're going to see efficiencies. You take AI, because you're always going to need the human element, because AI can't interpret our communications and nuances and relationships. But utilizing AI to make things more efficient, effective, and saving time. I think that's a great use of AI.
Who's using AI, any kind of AI in their planning? What are you using it for? Just shout out some things, yeah. Email templates, responses, what else?
Rejection letters, I hate writing back.
That's great, I like that.
Excel formulas, yes. Social media. So has anybody tried saying, I have a 3-day program for 100 people, and map out a program for me? Right, and then you say, can you please put that into a table? All of those things happen in 6 seconds each. It's amazing, yeah.
And what are 3 venues in Austin, Texas that this would fit at?
And what are 3 venues in Austin, Texas this would fit at? Absolutely. So it is things that can make it a lot easier to include in your RFPs, so that you can just get those better responses. And that's happening really fast. And it's fun. Like, I love when I'm just like, oh, look, I can just change how I want to do my gala dinner, and poof, I have a table. So it's on every level of planning. It's just taking some of that. I don't know, I spent years building beautiful program grid tables, and boy, am I happy to turn that over to AI.
So good point. So it will bring efficiency, right? So we'll be able to do things faster. We'll put the things that we don't like writing rejection letters. We'll let AI do that. For anybody who saw my presentation yesterday, Boys in the Boat was one of my slides, and I actually asked AI, tell me about the teamwork dynamics within Boys in the Boat. And I got, a full-page report on it. So there's so many great uses of it when you get comfortable with it and understand how we can leverage it. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. So in terms of what are some effective strategies around, what are basically, when it comes to contracting, right? So when it comes to contracting, what are your must-haves, non-negotiables?
Whatever the client wants.
Yeah, great question. Must-haves. Well, in this marketplace, and so much compression and relative to maximizing revenues, it's like 3 days pre and post group availability. If you don't have that, I've seen situations where a dormer will, if a group needs like a couple rooms, no, we won't give you the group rate, and they're not at over 85% occupancy. So it's just some weird stuff going on, and it's extremely, financial pressures of owners are dictating business so much more now. And so that's one particular items. Trying to mitigate risk for the customer, with attrition, 80%, accumulative, not by night, resale mitigation, and not always last sale, but sorry, Colby. A lot of it depends on your customer and your customer's needs, but mitigation terms for cancellations, keeping food and beverage, sorry, Colby, keep it outside. Anything inside of 90 days is reasonable. Outside, I don't feel it's reasonable. You're not procuring the food at this particular time, and the budget's usually done for catering, done at that time. Let's see, what else? I'll think of some things.
Just to piggyback on some of the things that you said, with our hotels, regardless what brand it is, the ownerships of that particular hotel and their location are more involved than I've ever seen before in past history and years, where they're actually having meetings with the sales departments and meetings in revenue and ADR and trying to look at the budget. And a part of the contracting aspect of it, that comes into play, as well as the biggest thing that we're looking at hotel-wise that are coming back with clients is the force majeure clause, which I'm sure you guys have been dealing with and focusing on, is the flexibility with that coming out over the last couple of years, obviously coming out of everything. That's an area where, talk about non-negotiable. I have clients who say this is absolutely non-negotiable, but then I also have clients say, well, everything's negotiable. It all depends on what you want to agree to, the partnership that you have, and what works well for the client as well as the sourcing supplier as well.
Okay. So part of it is, whatever the client wants, and then also trying to figure out where the balance is, right? And I remember talking to actually Mike and his colleague about this. There's a great book called Getting to Yes, which is about negotiation. And the reason why I say what is your non-negotiables is knowing what your non-negotiables are helps you get to the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, right? So you go in thinking, I want this, this, and this, and this. And then the client says, nope, 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 nope. Yes, maybe you get one yes. So really understanding what your true non-negotiables are, so that you on both the venue side and the sourcing side, so that you know where your common ground is, right?
I will say, if you don't ask, you're not going to get either way direction. So I think that's also an opportunity, but just knowing that the backdrop and education, so what you're asking and why you're asking, so that way when you do have the negotiation points, you have the reasons you can work back and forth.
Oh, no, great information. I think it's really important to put those items that are really super important for you, put them in your RFPs so you know ahead of time where you stand. All right, and that's your negotiating with them with a particular hotel. I've had a lot of instances where I'm working with, we all have green salespeople, and it's not it happens, and they haven't been trained. And so we worked really hard on a particular contract, and she said, no, 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 no. And I said, okay, we spent a lot of time on the energy, and we want to close this out. And then she goes, I need to go talk to my team. And I go, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So tell me what you're going to tell the team. And I want you to tell me how you're going to explain what I want and why it's important, what's the value of this business, the revenue it's going to bring to the hotel. It's a good pattern. And in my mind, it makes sense. It's not a reasonable request. And she says this or that, and I go, no, don't say that, say this. And I tell them what to say so they can convince the dorma to get what we both want in order to close the deal. So it's kind of one of my best practices, and it's just knowing both sides of the fence and understanding how to educate people and sharing your story to the hotel community. So
I think it's an added value. You're setting the expectation from the beginning, so that way you know what your looking for, what the clients are looking for, what their expectations are, so that'll help you guide through all that continuous process, whether it's sourcing, the contracting, negotiation. They understand what that the important needs are. So I think setting that from the beginning is really important.
And I think this might be a bit contentious, but we spend a lot of time. So I've spent 3 decades on the buying side in some sort of capacity, and I've spent a lot of time with hotel salespeople and convention centers and across different industries, having lovely conversations and lovely dinners and great activities, and almost no real conversations about the challenges we face on our two sides. And I think that it's really important that we understand that at the end of the day, we're both doing a job with one shared objective, which is to have great meetings that bring people together and allow them to do the business that they need to do. And we're also in a business, and that's okay. And to open up more of those conversations, I think, is something that we should be looking to do.
Love that, right? So I think to what Mike's point was too, it's about partnership, and you all have said that it's about relationship and partnership. So when you're working with your partner seller at the hotel, strategizing. Okay, I really want to see this work. I know you really want to see this work because we have a shared objective of hitting goals, right? So how do you equip that person with the information they need? So that is a great example, and I love what Tahira said too, because we talk about sales calls, and I remember coming into multiple different organizations. I said, okay, we're going to go on a sales call. Well, their version of a sales call was dropping off some cookies and talking about how much they loved each other and how great they are. That is not a sales call. Sales call is exactly what Tahira is saying, is tell me what your challenges are. Tell me what is ailing your organization right now in the way of meetings, or vice versa. So that way you get to real conversation. So it's great to have events and all of those things. So I love what you said, though, because I think that's getting back to basics, right? And winning through relationships, but by mutual respect and understanding each other's challenges. And that goes back to that negotiation part, that getting to yes. You look for that common ground. What is it that you both want at the end of the day? So, okay. Anything else about contracts, negotiations? I want to make sure we leave some time for audience questions, too.
Yes, please ask questions. 'Cause
Okay.
these guys are really smart. But I just
Yeah.
want to say that one of the things so in my role now is at IMEX, which I don't want to assume anybody ever knows what IMEX is. So it is a very large trade show that happens twice a year. And just to put it in perspective of what happens from a business perspective, there's more than 80,000 one-to-one meetings that happen on that show floor over 3 days. So there is a lot of business being done, and a lot of people who show up with RFPs and are very serious, and a lot of people who show up and just have an opportunity to learn about properties and destinations that they've never would have had the opportunity to. So, and you develop those face-to-face relationships. And yes, you do it over nice dinners and nice meetings, and you hug everybody, but there is a lot of business being done. So it's those opportunities, I think, that are important too.
Absolutely, yes. So yeah, anytime getting in front of customers again too, which again, during the pandemic, a lot of that went away. And so now making up for lost time, getting in front of those customers, not just at events, but at one-to-one. So, okay, so the one question we didn't talk about, I'd like to just address real quickly, and then we'll open it up to the audience, which is sustainability is such a hot topic right now in today's concern around climate change. So when it comes to sourcing venues, is this something that you're hearing from your clients? And what are you hearing?
Hands up, audience. Are you hearing it from your clients?
Yes? Yes?
Awesome.
That's very
Six
surprising,
of you.
Yeah.
I would say in the corporate industry, 75% of RFPs are coming out with that information on it.
Okay.
I would say, and I apologize not knowing across brands, but Hyatt in general is looking to go zero carbon emissions at majority of the hotels by 2030, because it's so important to moving the future and getting that out of the climate change and everything else. So it's going to grow even more across brands and industry.
I think it's customer centric. I have certain customers that we just need to know what measures a venue is doing for being more sustainable. Then there's other customers that we want to increase or decrease our carbon footprint. Tell me how I can do it at your hotel. So it's really specific to the particular specific customer. Excuse me, and yeah.
I would just say that most associations and every corporation in the world, somewhere on their website, if they are your client, you will find their net zero strategy. And if their events are not responsibly thinking about helping them do that, then we're missing the boat.
So if you haven't encountered it, it is coming, really, is what you're saying. And I think a lot of, it's like 2040, 2050 are the years that everybody has benchmarks to achieve. So, okay, thank you, panel. With that, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. If anybody has a question,
Please use the microphone.
please come up here and use the microphone.
Only
That'd be
so
great.
that it can be recorded.
So one of the trends that maybe we didn't go over that my team really is struggling with is this increase in hybrid meetings, right? So having smaller groups in-house who have lots of people out of town. And this is resulting in decreased revenue for like catering packages, parking packages, beverage packages. Is there any aspect of that trend of hybrid meetings that you see as a positive, that you see as something we can leverage? Because that's really, really increasing for us.
It's a great question. Does anybody want to take that one?
I was going to give it to you, Colby.
Actually, in our world, it's actually not as high as what you're suggesting.
Okay.
We're seeing it going lower. I think
Okay.
it's not going to change. It's going to be the regardless, depending on what industry market you're in. I think it depends on the program and what's happening with the individual company or whatever. I've seen an uptake where, all these new companies and talk about brand new workforce. A lot of the workforce is brand new. Everyone wants to get there and see everyone. So we're seeing the opposite end of that spectrum where people are getting together one-on-one contact. So I think it all going to depend on what you're sourcing, who you're sourcing for, what the company's doing, and what their objective is for that particular meeting.
Yeah, fair enough.
But also, too, when you have that aspect, when you have hybrid, you're gaining more potential attendees for that meeting that can't get there, can't travel, don't have the budget. So it's a double-edged sword.
That's fair
when
enough. So
looking at it.
using those type of hybrid meetings to kind of form those relationships, yeah, that makes sense. I also wanted to say, as part of that 80%, like genuine thank you to you guys for stepping away from your commitments to do things like this, because that 80%, this allows us a lot more room for growth in the industry. So thank you.
Yay. Great question. I do want to just say one thing about the hybrid meetings. So John Chen had a session yesterday about hybrid meetings, and they can be done so well with the right technology. And the other thing is that I have some friends that are in the events industry, and they cater to hybrid meetings, meaning, sure, you can still include your food and beverage minimum. Maybe it's some sort of package that gets shipped to the to the hybrid meeting attendee. So there are organizations out there that do that sort of thing. And if you as a hotel or venue could partner with someone like that to help, because doing it yourself, if you don't do it every day, would be a nightmare. But maybe there's opportunity there to kind of think outside creatively how to still get revenue from those hybrid attendees.
I have a couple questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I do events for nonprofit associations. So obviously we're always looking at how to do things more efficiently, but also cost effective. One of the things that you mentioned that I was curious about was you talked about having things on your RFP that bring more value to move yours to the top of the list. What are examples of what that would be? For example, we use Helms Briscoe for a lot of ours. So I don't actually necessarily know exactly what they're putting on the RFP. I just know what I told them.
Yeah. A good source is to look at your master account and see what revenue you're driving from your event to the hotel. And sharing that financial information to the hotel is helpful to them to qualify the business.
Okay.
More so than if you don't have it in these days right now, because it's all about the dollar value. So there's the old school that you wouldn't share that information, you left the cards on the table. But now, right now, with the compression and the demand in the hotels, and you want to be in the hotels you want to be at, you got to sell your event to the hotels these days. Would you say so, Colby?
That's a valid point, especially in the year for the year business. Absolutely, because there's so many limitations. Comparatively to last year, we've seen the amount of lead volume and sourcing and meetings booked in there for the year has decreased actually because there's so much limitations. The whole hotel saying, and sales managers like, we don't have the availability or whatever. That's not just a saying, it's actually happening. And I'm sure you guys are feeling it and seeing it when you're sourcing. You just don't have the availability unless there's flexibility. So all that will come into play.
Okay. The other issue that I'm seeing a lot is we are usually intentional on where we hold our conferences at, so that there's usually people in that area. So our meeting space to room needs isn't always ideal, so we get passed by a lot of properties because we don't have as many rooms like on peak as we need for meeting space. Is there some suggestions on how to have properties still consider us, or ways around that?
Flexibility. Just don't have time constraints on when you meet. A hotel can find a hole to fit your meeting that makes sense for them. And I used to call those space rooms ratios, we call those ugly babies, unfortunately. So you got to give them the lipstick on the pig, so to speak, and make it desirable that way. So if you can provide more flexibility, you can get into places.
I would also say too, if it's that important to yourself or your client or the attendees, call the director of sales and say, hey, let's have a conversation, or associate director. Make that more personable, the partnership. That way they completely understand what you're looking for as far as the program and what your needs are, and they're going to be able to, Mike's point, work with you and find something that's going to be balanced for you.
I think without sounding too altruistic, it's also the values match of where you're going. You know, so it's, are you going to a property where they have a shared alignment with your cause, and can, you know, that then become a good partnership?
Okay, and then in some hotels, I'm seeing that the max peak numbers are reducing. Is that something that we're seeing across the board, or is these just maybe some of these unique hotels?
Is there certain areas or locations that you're seeing that? And generally, it's all going to depend on the market and what's happening over those dates, the pattern, everything. So is there a specific time frame or things that you can kind of share to share?
I'm seeing it obviously in towns where maybe it's not like a Seattle. I'm talking more like a Boise or something where it's still up and coming with their hotels. But some of the hotels that used to offer us, you know, close to 300 on peak are like, you get 175. So.
Yeah, that could be it's a result of the citywide business. The hotels are holding citywide blocks versus in-house. That one reason.
I would also think too, depending on location, the ownership is all probably more involved. So they're trying to have that group mix to transient mix change a lot, and they're trying to find the balance. So whether before it was groups, you know, had 300, but now they're not necessarily picking up the 300. They're falling short in attrition. So they're trying to find the balance to help the client and user for the meeting space and group rooms, but also answer to the ownership where they need to produce revenue, ADR, and everything. So I think there's a lot of combination variables that are coming into it, but yes.
I think that's also where AI and data comes in, because as planners, we have so little data that we use compared to what a hotel is using on literally sometimes an hour-by-hour basis as requests come in.
And just another thought to add to that, when, you know, that particular hotel, sometimes they change that policy, right? And so again, it's about the relationship, and maybe there's a price that would be available for those additional 150 rooms. So I think it's really understanding and asking that question, and I think someone else said, or Colby said, you know, call the director of sales, have a conversation and just say, you know, it's really important for our group, we want your hotel. What are the options?
Okay, last question, sorry. We source some national ones that move around every single year conferences. And is there, when you're putting out these RFPs, if you're staying within one particular brand, are they more likely to accept your RFP because you've already held events at their other locations? Or is it you just want to open it up to everyone?
I think it's a combination of all the above. They're not, whether you stick to one brand consistently or not, it depends on the availability, the pattern, your revenue, the group mix. All those different variables are going to play. And there's added incentives for obviously staying in one particular brand where you can do multi-years and everything else as far as the bottom line to your client and customer. But it's back to what you're looking for, what your needs are, what's best going to fit the company, whether it's stability or the meeting space or their DEI components and everything else. So I think it's more of what your vision is and what the company's looking for to be able to help you provide all the details.
And that's where a great global sales representative comes in.
Good plug for Cody.
Awesome, well, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, great questions.
This audience is on fire today.
So I'm a corporate event planner, and my question for you is about F&B minimums. And a lot of times when I plan events, we sign a contract for, whatever the F&B minimum is, and then we have a low attendance. So there is, so as a planner, I don't want to order more food just to meet the F&B minimum. I want to order just enough that's going to get used, right? So my question and suggestion is for hotels, are there ways where, so if I'm, signed a contract for a $5,000 F&B minimum, right? But we're really only using about $2,000. What happens to that money, right? Like, do we have a say? Like, my suggestion to hotels where we don't, meet that minimum is, could you use that money and donate it to the, a food kitchen, whatever it might be. So that's just something that I'm thinking, like, that kind of ties into with sustainability. So what's your opinion on that? Is that something hotels are able to do, or?
Well, one thing you might do for contractually, Colby, sorry, rather than if you have this minimum, if you have in your contract, you want to only go after the profit. So your loss there should be profit versus 100%. I like your notion about, sharing the food and donating and whatnot. I would look at the hotel about, depending about other business you might have to mitigate that. That's one way. It's a win-win, so look at that versus it's a hard cost in writing a check. You want to write a check. You don't want to write a check, sorry. And find a way for that to happen for you.
Okay. Mike, what would be a typical, so you're saying instead of taking the full, $3,000, do a percentage of that based on profit. Do you have a suggestion of what that would be for?
Between 40 and 60% is the general rule of thumb.
I would say also too, as your planning process and going through those details and you're figuring out that's going to be a potential opportunity, have those conversations. What can we do to help? Keeping that partnership is going to help you out in the long run too.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello. So I'm here like Colby. I manage 2 hotels, and I'm having a very difficult time with Cvent leads. So every time I get leads, direct leads, the first thing I do, I pick up the phone and I make that connection. And then Cvent leads, I legitimately just got a lead that was like, do not call me. So it's like they give you the information and you give it to them, but there is so much room, at least in my property, to negotiate. I'm for business, I can meet you in so many different aspects, but I'm feeling like on the Cvent is they read what you send back to them and they don't even try to negotiate. They just, doesn't work for me, decline and move on, when I think I could get that business if they even picked up their phone.
Yeah, for me, it's refreshing to have a hotel call me and say, Mike, I really want this opportunity. I go, really? Yes. Boom, they're ahead of the list. And then I'll spend time and have conversation with you and get to that win-win point to have you earn the business. We both earn the business. But picking up the phone, it's like, we don't use it anymore. That's the only way I used to do sales, was the phone. There was no email before. That's how old I am. But yeah, utilizing the phone is a great tool, and that can help. To me, it means a lot to me to know when a hotel wants the business. It's extra time to do because there's so much going on in their worlds.
I mean, reality of our world is not everyone's going to have that phone time, So obviously, Cvent's a great tool, great resource to utilize for meetings. And not everyone's going to want to say, hey, I can't call you because they're too busy. Like, they're stretched thin as it is too. So, if you can't call them, you can't call them. But, your availability, your messaging in Cvent, because when they pull up their Cvent details of what the hotel said and comments and everything, they're going to see that, hey, we want to make this work for you. Utilize that system and that resource to try to get you up in front, or asterisk, whatever the case is. That's one of the things that I would suggest potentially to help. It may not work 100% of the time, but at least it gives you the opportunity to get you in front of the rest of the venues or whatever the case is when they see that.
Or use email and say, hey, I really want this business. I want you to know that, I respond to your response. This is a great opportunity for a hotel. It's great. We want it. We want to book it. Boom. That's one way.
I also remember getting advice a long time ago, which was when you're calling people, do you actually pick up the phone and call the Cvent leads even though it says do not call?
if they say, do not call me, I'm not calling them. I submit the lead, and then I'm like, hi, I sent you the lead. If you need anything, let me know.
So what would
Rule
you
of
say to them?
sales, you don't listen or read.
So I was given the advice, if you have a question, find a question that you have that's not on the RFP, meaning that value, you know what you're looking for in value, and say, hey, and you could send an email or you could call, and if they don't answer, just say, I'm really interested in this business and I'd like to know this about. So that was some advice that kind of maybe help get over that hump of do not call.
That's a really good piece of advice.
Okay.
And I just wanted to, my opinion for the lady asking about the food and beverage minimum.
Yeah.
Just call the salesperson. I had an event that happened. It was $20,000 in cancellation, and we ended up doing to-go food for their office.
Oh, there you go.
We
Creative
got
solution.
more money. They ended up spending more than the $20,000. They were happy, and we were happy. So it's just calling and negotiating. That's it.
Great idea.
Yeah,
Thank
good.
you.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
So I have kind of a circle back to the staffing kind of issue that the hotels are having as far as the longevity that they've been there and or the experience. What are your suggestions for some of us event managers or planners who have had poor execution experience from like, we're talking a lot about like building the contract, getting the contract, but like the actual follow through of the event from the hotel's perspective. I just had an event that I did that was honestly one of the biggest nightmares of my life dealing with a hotel. And for me, at the time, it was like absolutely never coming back to this hotel again. However, knowing after further conversation that the team would not be there shortly after we left. How do I build trust as an event planner to go back to that hotel to give them a second chance when my first impression was not good?
That's a great question.
Ouch.
It's honesty. I mean,
That's painful.
Has
That's
anybody
painful.
else had that experience in the last few years? It's been rough. It's been rough. Staffing has been rough.
yeah.
I think it's having those conversations at the beginning. We've all run into this, in the last few years. But it's having the conversations before you get into the property. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to learn the hard way. And by hard way, I mean like really unfortunately. But having those conversations just really up front now, because we know people are new. We know that they're not necessarily trained. What can we do to make sure that, they actually understand our expectations and it's not funneled through 3 layers of down to a banquet manager who has a new team. How can we help you? And use this as a bit of a opportunity to let people know what planners actually expect, but also why. Like, why does it matter if I'm coming here? This isn't, to you, it's just another banquet. To me, it's something that actually is going to make a difference in people's lives for whatever your reason is. And sometimes just getting that buy-in, it's really hard to do. I wish it wasn't, but it is. And that's the only way we're going to train the next generation.
I would
Sorry
also
about that.
say too is, this isn't going to happen for every particular meeting and benefit, but getting the hotel leadership involved, especially in that particular instance, making sure that they understand the process and the challenges that you went through. You only work together as a partner, but it starts from the top, so they need to work together as a team in order to succeed and have a successful event. That's where if you really drive that value to the leadership, then that'll drive down into the other colleagues of the hotel and making sure they can clearly understand to benefit you more and get that trust back with that aspect.
Plus, I have a really funny story for you later, so we'll connect.
Mike, any further
Yeah,
thoughts?
just on Colby's point, yeah, I would utilize your national salespeople to help communicate your experience. That they can help to share that with the general manager and make sure the resources are being allocated correctly and just ferret it all out. But it's definitely getting to the hotel management and leadership with your experience, because they don't want to hear that. That's not good for them. That keeps to happen. They're going to lose business. So they want to know, fix the problem, find the underlying issues. If it was a train issue or whatever, it needs to be fixed, though.
Yeah, fill out your survey. And the other thing is that, you doing on-site walkthroughs before or having those transparent conversations Knowing that staffing is still a challenge. I've had staffing challenges and service challenges. Tell me what's going on with your venue. And going to the operations person with that question might be even more beneficial than just staying at the salesperson, because it's a delicate balance. So, okay. Thank you so much to our panel, Mike, Tahira, and Colby. You guys have been amazing in sharing your experiences and insights. So if anybody else has further questions, I'm going to ask the panel to just maybe stay around here for a little bit in case you want to come up and ask any further questions. With that, any closing comments or anything else?
Well, I'd like to just say that I was teasing Mike about being old, but I have cut miles and miles of thermal fax paper in my time.
I remember that too. All right, we've got a lot of experience of years or a lot of years of experience is what we're trying to say here. So, all right, thanks again, everyone, and thank you for your great questions.